Hello and welcome to the presentation of our webinar, How to Prepare a Winning Grant Proposal. I want to thank you very much for joining me today in trying to understand the steps on the way to preparing your proposal and improving and increasing the chances that your proposal will actually be accepted. Before we start, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Avi Stayman. I'm the CEO of Academic Language Experts. And we help academic scholars prepare their research for publication. So that includes translation and editing in preparation for submission of articles for journals and books, lectures, etc. But in addition, we also help scholars prepare their grant proposals for submission to big granting bodies such as the NIH, the ERC, Horizon 2020, and more. And I hope that in the half hour, 40 minutes that we have in front of us, you will be able to glean a lot of important information that will help you on the road to preparing your winning grant proposal. I'll just start off by saying that the motivation and the reason that I decided to prepare this presentation is because as part of my work, I spend a lot of time in research authorities all around the world and meeting with the head of research departments in major universities. And as I sat down, what was important to me was to listen to them and to understand what they need. And the same theme came up over and over in all of my conversations, which is a serious need to better understand the grant funding process and do a better job of having the scholars really prepare their research, which is at a high quality, really high level, but being able to present it in a proper way that will be attractive and engaging and understandable to the particular funding body. Now, this presentation is going to have three parts. The first part is we're going to go ahead and discuss finding the right funding body, how you go ahead and identify which funding body would be most appropriate for your research. We're going to talk about how to build your proposal, building an outline for a successful proposal. We're going to talk, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of actually writing and editing your proposal and how to go about doing that. And along the way, there'll be all sorts of helpful resources and tips for further review and further reading. All right, so we're going to start off by talking about how do we find the right funding body. And this is really critical because the match is essential. Finding the right match is essential to having a chance at winning your proposal. And I'll just say, in general, there are different funding bodies, and each funding body has its own set of priorities and its own agenda that it wants to push forward. And it's really, really critical to be aware of that agenda before you head out and before you start working on your proposal, before you even start writing. For example, I know, we're located here in Israel, so the Israel Science Foundation is looking for very theoretical proposals. They want scholars to break new ground and to uncover new research areas, and that's what they give priority to. Whereas I know some of the European funding bodies are actually looking for things that are super practical, and they want to be able to show at the end of the research that there was a true impact made in the real world. So, that's just one example of knowing the funding body's goals before you start. Another few things that I'll mention is it's important to do some research before you get started about what sort of research has received funding in the recent history. Go back, see what organizations fund which types of research, and do some homework in order to best be prepared. And you can also look, you can speak to your colleagues within your institution, but also outside of your institution. And if possible, obviously this is dependent on your research, but if your research hits on a hot topic, what we like to call a hot topic, which is a topic that a lot of people are speaking about, are interested in, it's, evolving, it's coming along, or if you can frame your proposal in, within the context of a current discussion that's going on, that can only help you and improve your chances for success. All right, so before let's take a step back for a minute and talk about, why do we even bother with research grants? What are our goals with the research grant? Why do we put them together? And everyone obviously has their own motivations, but let's go over some of the main ones, because I think by clarifying for ourselves what our main goals are, why we're putting in all this time and energy, because it does take a lot of time and energy, we'll better be able to understand what track we want to take for our particular proposal. So first of all, it kickstarts our research. And there are projects that we simply, without funding, are not able to accomplish without getting some sort of research grant. And oftentimes those are our most ambitious and real lofty goals can only be accomplished with a serious amount of funding. Some research does not need that, but oftentimes we do. Another, and this is related, another point is that we want to be able to take on big research questions, meaning, oftentimes, especially when we're doing statistical studies, in order to get results that really matter, that really make a difference, that really demonstrate what we're trying to show, we need a big population size, or we need, a long period of time. And those grants are generally not able to be funded by our research institution alone. Therefore, they need help. And so that's what I would call, I guess, the pure motives. What the pragmatic or more practical motives include, consideration for promotion and the value that your research authority, like I said, I've sat down with many research authorities, and this is what they're saying, is that they want the researchers, to put in the time and effort to really be able to send off as many grant proposals as possible, and obviously, try and win whenever they can. It sort of makes you a hero within your own institution, which can lead to all sorts of other, benefits. And I would also just say that, in terms of promotion or our standing in the field, what's interesting is that a grant that you have received actually turns into a line on your CV, meaning whereas maybe 20, 30 years ago it was a means to an ends, in a certain way receiving a respected grant now can actually be an ends in and of itself. And here I want to talk about finding your Mazal. Now, Mazal is a word in Hebrew which means luck. But some people explain it to mean the words makom zman la'asot, and that means the right time and the right place to do. Then you got to do what you're intended to do. And how do you do that? So first of all, how do we make sure that what we're doing is at the right time, is at the right place, and that we're doing it the way we should? So we have to find the perfect match, and that's really critical. It's hard to fit a certain type of proposal into a funding body that doesn't really fund those sort of proposals. We don't want to force it. We want to wait until we find the right thing, until we find the perfect match. So obviously that starts off with a topic, right? We need to have a topic that is of interest, of great interest to the funding body. The timeline needs to be right. Sometimes we find out about funding opportunities a week or two before, and as tempting as they may be, the ability to put together a high quality proposal within a few weeks or even within a month or two can really be a challenge. So understand that as the longer we have to prepare it properly, the higher chance that it's going to succeed. We need to think about our qualifications. I had a situation a few months ago where we did a campaign encouraging people to submit for grant to receive grant funding for translating their books, which relates to another side of our business. And a number of scholars were really interested and very excited. We had initial conversations until I asked them, well, what is your official academic position? And then they were either adjunct lecturers or postdoctoral researchers. And unfortunately, this grant did not provide, meaning one of the stipulations of the grant is that you had to have a full-time position at a university. And therefore, they weren't qualified in order to receive the grant. And that's something that can save you a lot of time and heartache later on. And I would also say look for prep course if you're doing a serious grant proposal for the EU, for example. There are prep courses for specific funding online, which I encourage you to take, and it'll also be able to help you identify whether this is the right one, and once it is the right one, to best prepare yourself for submitting to that institution. All right, this is one of my favorite phrases. And if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. And what that means is that we really want to have a great match in terms of our proposal and the funding body. And one of the reasons for that is because there's a tremendous amount of competition. I recently saw a study in Nature, which talked about an average of 15 to 20% of grant proposals are awarded, which means that even if we are on a good level, even if we do have excellent research, we're talking about 1 in 5. So we need to continually being able to search and find the right funding agencies. And I left you a link here, which gives you some ideas for funding agencies that you can turn to. The major ones being, ISF, GIF, BSF, NIH, ERC. Become familiar with them. Become familiar with the major ones, with the ones that are most impactful in your field, obviously, but also become familiar with some of the smaller, more local ones. Sometimes there are ones in your native language, not in English, that are worth turning to, and maybe there's a little bit less competition there. But again, it needs to be a hell yes. It needs to be something where you're like, this is the right fit for my research. Otherwise, we may be wasting our time. And sometimes that means being patient and waiting. And sometimes there's nothing available right now. But if you have the proposal ready, and you're on the lookout for the call for proposals, then you'll find something which is relevant sooner or later. And make sure you speak with your research authority. They can be a very helpful resource and be able to identify and find major grant funding bodies, which can help you. One of the other important lessons that I have learned by going out into the field and sitting with researchers and speaking with them is there's a serious fear of rejection. There's a serious fear both with article submissions, but as well as with grant proposal submissions. There's a certain feeling of safety when we don't send anything out, and when we don't expose our research for review and for criticism and for peer review. So we need to get over this. This is something that, I brought a picture here of a little cat. We need to see ourselves as the lion shadow, even if we're not there yet, right? We don't have tenure. We're not a professor yet. We need to see ourselves in that light as our research has value. It's important. And the biggest shame is for research to sit on our computers and not see the light of day, whether it's a grant proposal or an article or a book, whatever it may be. If we think it has value, let's push it out there and let's get it submitted. It also means we need to have a backbone in the sense of we need to be prepared for multiple submissions. Oftentimes the first or second submission is not going to be enough. It may likely be rejected. And we shouldn't see that as a failure. Because every time we get feedback on a proposal, it improves the proposal. In fact, they did a study on journal articles that came back from peer review and were rejected, and they actually end up being more successful in terms of citations and views than articles that are accepted to their first journal. And it's the same way with grants. And let's get feedback from our peers. Let's turn to our peers, ask them for help, and it needs to be a two-way street. I often get questions, no one can help me, or how do I know they're not going to steal my research? We need to be able to help them, and they help us. And in that way, we work together to push our mutual research forward. All right, so that's a little bit about how we go about finding our funding body. Now I want to talk a little bit about how to build the proposal. And this really gets into the crux of, okay, we've found where we want to submit to. How do we build our own research in a way which will give us the best chances of succeeding with our proposal. Okay, so first of all, actually, before we get to this, first of all, I just want to say that it's very important to think about, you know, who are the players that are involved in when we're building our proposal before we even get into the crux of what we're going to write about. And we need to in order to give ourselves the best chances of succeeding, we need to understand who our potential partners are. You know, if, for example, if we're in a smaller college, do we have the ability to connect with a bigger university potentially, or scholars from a bigger university who may have facilities that we don't have, in order to make sure that we give our proposal the best chance of succeeding? We also, some other things we want to think about are maybe we want to have international partners, meaning maybe we want to show that this is a project between two different countries, and that can actually help our chances of succeeding. So let's get into some of the nitty-gritty. So first of all, know our funding body, okay? And this is sort of the connector with choosing the funding body. Once we've chosen it, we need to know what's involved. The first thing I want to do is point out the link at the bottom of the page. This is a self-evaluation form for Horizon 2020. And this is a really great tool that I encourage you to use to fill out, to understand where you are at with your current research, okay, and how that compares to where you need to be in order to be ready to actually submit your proposal. And it helps you clarify what you need and what's missing. So first of all, oftentimes scholars will write their proposals and then go and search a funding body. And if you've done that, it's not the end of the world. You can work with that. But if you're working from scratch, the ideal thing to do is actually write the original proposal with the funding body in mind. In general, I would say that writing with an audience in mind is extremely beneficial and helpful because it helps focus your energies and your thought process to a specific goal. And it's always easier to write for someone specific than it is just writing generically. And it also will help you save time in not having to redo the entire proposal for the specific funding body. You do your homework, you learn what's important to the specific funding agency, and you write with that in mind. You need to look at the key criteria. What's really important? You need to fit sometimes it does mean tweaking your research a bit to explain the novelty. What are you coming to teach us that we don't know yet? Are there other people who already have explored this avenue? If so, what are you doing that brings a new element or an added value? We talked about how to team up with the right partners to make sure that you can actually leverage your proposal. It's very possible that they love the proposal, they love the idea, but they say, I don't know if you as an independent researcher can take this on your own. And therefore they're going to want to see, okay, which partners do you have in place in order to make this happen? And that might be, institutional partners, funding, research partners, obviously, if you need to go out and find, if you need to find independent contractors to help you with certain elements, you need to be able to demonstrate that. Learn what the criteria for the award is. We talked about that. And in general, just keep in mind what the funding body is interested in. I would read the instructions a number of times. Every time, letting it sink in what's actually important. Read between the lines. See what they say on their website to become more familiar. All right, be pedantic. This is something that we don't always tell people to do, but when it comes to research proposals, it's really important because I've come across many cases of proposals that have been rejected for technical reasons. A missed deadline, a form that wasn't completed as the way it should be, a template that was missing, and sometimes some funding bodies will consider the proposal despite that, but most will not. Most will just, their first round of review is simply seeing who followed the instructions. And sometimes that can be very difficult, especially for people who are culturally not used to sort of a very pedantic approach, and say, okay, well, just because of that one small thing that I missed, the whole proposal is canceled. It doesn't necessarily reflect, it doesn't at all reflect on the quality of your proposal, but if these are the instructions, then we need to follow them. And that means, it means going over, having a checklist for ourselves and making sure we cross everything off and giving ourselves enough time in order to do that properly. I like to give a comparison when it, or in this regard to two different people, two different personalities who come to the passport office. There are those who come to the passport office and they printed out everything they need ahead of time, and they've got it all there, and everything's organized and ready to go, and they zip right through the line and get approved. And then there are people who think, oh, I know in general more or less what I need. I'll just bring what I have on me and I'll go and hope for the best. That's where you start getting into trouble. So same thing here. Building your budget. So we're not going to get into the technicalities of how to actually build your budget. Obviously, you need to consider a number of factors: personnel, contractors, equipment, materials, travel costs, overhead, marketing costs, and spreading the word. All these things need to be into your budget. I'm not an expert in budget building, and that's not what this webinar is about today. But I want to point out something really, really critical that I've seen, is look at your budget as a way to demonstrate competence. And what I mean by that is that if your numbers reflect an accurate portrayal of costs, a realistic portrayal of expenses, and you have demonstrated that you've done your homework to understand how much everything is going to cost, it shows that your entire proposal actually is thought out, well planned, and realistic. And on the flip side, obviously, if you ask for either too much or even too little for a specific thing, it will raise red flags with the reviewers, and the reviewers may say to themselves, well, if the budget is off, then maybe the research proposal is not exactly accurate as well. This is something you really need to spend time on. It's something that's a weak point for a lot of scholars, understandably so. And this is, as much as anything else, this is something that you should work hand in hand with your research authority on to make sure that your budget is in line with realistic expectations and realistic costs. All right. We've now made it to the third and almost final section of the webinar, and we're going to talk about writing and editing your proposal. So until now, we've been focusing sort of on, first we talked about how to find the right place, then we talked about how to build your proposal and make sure that it's appropriate for the funding body that you've chosen. Now we're going to actually get into the nitty-gritty of how to write and edit your proposal properly. All right, so I want to start off, actually, before we even get into common errors, let's go back for a second and talk about how we start off with writing. And here's my suggestion. This is I would call it a template that can obviously be adjusted for each particular funding body. But here's what I think is a very healthy exercise in order to be able to start working on your proposal. So first of all, write an outline, okay? Now, what should the outline compose of? Number one, you need to write a generic paragraph on the importance of your field, of the research field, and the specific research that you do. Because if you can't demonstrate very quickly what you're trying to do and what you're trying to say, or even about your field in general, you're going to have a difficult time getting the reviewers to continue reading. The second paragraph should be a very forceful argument on the main thrust and novelty of your research. This is your opportunity to explain how and when and why you're going to contribute. What is your contribution? What is this new proposal? And I want to give a word of warning. This is not a place to start talking about your credentials and all the wonderful things you've done in the past. There are places for that. The second paragraph should simply be, what is new and why is this groundbreaking? And what are you bringing to the world that has not been there before? And on the background of the first paragraph of why the field is important and what the field is about, then you've already built yourself a strong basis. And number three is starting to get into some of the details, and not rhetoric, but actually getting into what you are going to be doing in the project and what are the tangible expected outcomes. And in that way, you're demonstrating that you have a vision for this specific proposal that you're putting together, and you know what your end game is and what you expect to accomplish. And then finally, in the fourth paragraph, it should be a review of the current status of your research area, what's going on, where is research currently up to. Again, this is not a this template will not work for all proposals. Every proposal is its own thing, but this will help you think through the process. And then when you're actually filling out each individual proposal, you have something prepared, and you can just not copy and paste, but you can have something, a basis to work off of. All right. Here I brought you'll see the link at the bottom is an article from the University of Michigan, which I found really, really helpful. The ideas here in the slide are not just from there, but I took a lot of them from there. And it's a very simple premise. Why are proposals rejected? And this was put together by a number of reviewers, or I took from a number of reviewers who have basically shared their experiences with why they reject proposals. So it's sort of an insider's look to the rationale behind it. I know oftentimes it can be frustrating. We don't know why our proposal was rejected or accepted. Here's some information, some general information for what we should look out for. All right, so let's run through. There are too many objectives. We're not focused enough on what we're trying to accomplish. We're too spread out and trying to accomplish too many things at one time. Sometimes we think that in this regard, more is less, in the sense that it may be unrealistic to accomplish as much as we may want to within one proposal. The objectives aren't measurable. We need to make sure that whatever we say we're going to accomplish, we have a way of evaluating along the way, a very clear way of evaluating, to make sure that we can actually follow through and we can prove that we've accomplished what we set out to accomplish. The project idea doesn't fit the general topic. This goes back to finding the right funding body, but also finding the right funding opportunity within that body, and making sure that our idea fits their general goals, or if they have a specific call for proposals, that call for proposals. There isn't enough information provided to demonstrate that the project is really realistic. If we can't show within a few paragraphs that there's a real way to do this, then it's going to be hard for a funding body to invest time and money and energy into a project that they're not sure can actually be accomplished. If the added value is unclear, right? They see your proposal and they say, okay, well, it's similar in many ways to proposals that have already been done. I don't see the actual value here. It's going to be difficult to receive funding. What the impact is going to be on the target funding, on the target audience, especially if you're looking at not just a theoretical proposal, but a pragmatic and practical one. You need to be able to demonstrate, using the evaluative tools that we discussed before, how you're going to measure what is the impact, going to be on the subjects of the research or other additional people. Maybe on industry, on business, on the academic world, what that impact is going to be. Is it repeatable, right? Is this a study that we can then take and bring into other contexts? And will it contribute to science as a whole and not just our own research agenda? How do we differentiate ourselves from other proposals that might be out there that might be similar in nature? And other groups that may be taking on the same challenge. Maybe we have a unique approach. And if we do, and if we know that the funding body is aware of the other research, we need to spend maybe a bit more time demonstrating what's unique about our proposal, about our approach to the funding, and how we go ahead and demonstrate that within the proposal. All right. This is an important slide, which I would say is really critical, not just for funding proposals, but in general. So these are general good writing habits that I would recommend. Number one is you have to state the novelty of your approach, and make sure it's clear to the reviewers how your approach differs from those who came before you. providing relevant statistical information in the methodology is obviously cuts at the core of good writing for a grant proposal, and it's really important that if statistics are not our strong point, that we bring on someone who really understands and can demonstrate what we're trying to accomplish. Personnel, explain who's doing what and why and when. You're not right. There's usually one or two people who are in charge of putting together the proposal itself, but they're not the only ones who are involved in the research. So the more you can explain who the staff are, what the composition of the staff are, who's the principal investigator, and then who are the what their role is, and what other staff roles there are, can help boost the confidence of the funding body in your proposal. It's important to clarify the contribution. What sort of contribution is your study going to make? And again, it's not necessarily just in terms of theoretical knowledge. Will this have, especially with funding bodies, they're interested in being able to show at the end of the day, our funding has helped solve X or fix Y or bring to an improvement in whatever area it is that you're studying. And that's really important. And finally, and I can't state this enough, write a killer abstract. Oftentimes we get proposals where people forget about the abstract entirely until the end. They throw together a quick abstract and then they get rejected. They don't understand why. And this graph here, this picture that I put on the bottom, is actually from a study that I read about what is read in grant proposals. What I mean by that is we think, we hope, or we assume that our proposals are being closely read and scrutinized. And the truth is that oftentimes only the titles or the abstracts are being closely read and scrutinized, and the papers themselves or the proposals themselves are actually only if we pass those first two steps. So really spend time thinking about the title and the abstract. Nothing less than excellence will do. This is, like we said, 15 to 20% are accepted, and that's a big challenge. That's an uphill goal. So we need to make sure we have very clear objectives, a sound concept, and credible methodology. And our proposal has to be state of the art, and it really has to be innovative, in the sense that it's really bringing something new to the world and not just reinforcing things that we already know. Impact. We need to be able to demonstrate that what we are working on, or our proposal, really will have an impact on research, okay, but also on society as a whole. For many of these funding bodies, that's really critical. Sometimes it'll be blue ocean in the sense that it creates a totally new market opportunity that wasn't there beforehand. Sometimes it'll be not necessarily creating a new industry, but opening up a new field within an existing field. And it needs to be a big, taking on a really big challenge, and not something that you would just explore maybe in a lecture, but something that's much greater than that. And not only do you need to be able to explain what impact you're going to have, you actually need to go one step further and explain how you're going to disseminate that research. It's not enough just to have groundbreaking research. You need to explain how you are going to get the research out to the field. And that's something that some scholars sort of fall short on. They don't necessarily know or have the tools to think about how the research will get to those either government agencies or players that are involved in the research and could really benefit from the research. I think one way to think about it is try to think about the following questions. What problem are we trying to solve? What are you going to do in order to solve that problem? And how is your research going to solve that knowledge gap? And once you know those things, you can really start thinking about what impact your research is going to have. Professional assistance. before we even get into this, I want to say that it's really critical to be honest with yourselves about what the strengths, not only with yourselves, but honest with yourselves and the funding bodies, what your strengths and weaknesses are. And again, it goes back to the theme that we've discussed already, and that is, how trustworthy is your proposal? How much do they buy in to what you're saying as being true? And the more we can say, you know what, we are not experts in every single element of our project, and we need help, can really be beneficial. So I say that in general, that it's okay to say, here's our shortcomings, and here's maybe some funding needs that we have in order to overcome those shortcomings. And it's better to do that than sort of gloss things over and say, no, we'll be fine with something that's less than ideal. Now, more specifically, I want to talk about writing your proposal. So there is nothing wrong with asking for help or getting help, either in writing your proposal or editing your proposal. This is different than, I would say, writing an article, especially in the humanities and social sciences, where there's a certain, I would say, ethical obligation to write your own research. When it comes to grant writing, so it's a field unto its own. And obviously the research needs to be yours, and the data needs to be brought, and the literature review needs to be done by the researcher. But in compiling it and framing it in a way which really is attractive to the funding body is something that that at least in my opinion, is something that's okay to get help with, and that it's beneficial to get help with. And sometimes that'll mean you just have all the information and you throw it to the grant writer and have them help you. And sometimes it means more you putting together a proposal and having someone else come along, having a professional grant editor come along and review, scientific editor review, give you feedback, comments, suggestions, ways to reframe, restructure in order to give yourself the best chance to succeed. Obviously, check with your research authority to see what resources are available to you. Okay, let's wrap it up. We're a few more slides, and then we are finished here for today. So, first of all, to think about how to leverage your grant. Once you, hopefully, congratulations, you've received your grant from the funding body. Think about what article you're going to be writing already at the outset, as what publication you want to get out of this funding. Because in the end of the day, the funding is the first step that leads to a study, that leads to a publication. But it's important already to think about that from the outset. Obviously, you'll want to lecture about it, and you'll want to spread your findings and your research. So start thinking about what fora would be good to speak at. And obviously use your grant in order to create new partnerships, both within your field as well and within your institution and country and abroad. Here's a few helpful resources with some, the Weitzman link is to an alphabetical list of funding bodies in case you're looking to start searching. And for those scholars in Israel, I highly recommend looking at the ICERD website, the Innovation Israel website, which provides a tremendous amount of both resources, help, and ideas for how to succeed with European grants. Finally, I want to introduce ourselves, academic language experts. If you do need help with writing or editing your proposal, or with any other research that you may have, please feel free to be in touch with us. You can see here we have our website, phone number, and email. For those, the website here is actually the Hebrew website because it's got the he.aclang.com. If you're looking for the English site, just do the aclang.com. And we help at all stages of grant proposals. So you can come to us with your raw data and your findings and your literature review, and have us put it together for you. And you can also come with a ready proposal, and we will not only review for language and style and formatting, but we'll also be able to give a critical academic review, which takes into account both the academic content, because we have experts in the field who are working on your specific proposal, but also having in mind an understanding, a deep understanding of what the specific funding body is looking for, and being able to prepare the proposal in kind. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate your time. If you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to be in touch with me, in touch with our team. And I hope that you enjoyed this webinar and look forward to hearing from you.